Welcome to the Agile Software Engineering Deep Dive. My name is Alessandro Guida, and in this episode, I want to explore why recurring one-on-ones are one of the most important and most misunderstood tools in engineering leadership. Most managers agree that one-to-ones matter, yet too often they drift into polite status meetings, full of project updates and delivery details, while the topics that actually shape motivation, trust, and long-term performance remain unspoken. This episode reflects on a simple, experience-based way of structuring one-on-ones around 4 human dimensions: motivation, achievement, power, and belonging. The goal is not to turn one-to-ones into performance reviews or therapy sessions, but to make them a safe, practical space where small issues surface early, people feel heard, and leadership becomes a shared responsibility rather than a reporting ritual. This episode is especially relevant for new managers looking for a concrete starting point, and for experienced leaders who feel their one-on-ones have become routine. If you believe that strong engineering cultures are built through consistent human conversations, not just processes and tools, this episode is for you. Let's dive in.
Okay, so picture this scenario. It's 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday. The afternoon slump is just starting to hit, but you're fading it.
Right.
Because you have a really important meeting on the calendar. You're a manager, or maybe you're leading a team for the first time.
Yeah.
And you have a one-on-one scheduled.
And you've gone in with the absolute best intentions.
The best. You've blocked the time, you've silenced your Slack notifications, you've even, closed your laptop lid halfway to show you're really listening. You genuinely want to connect.
It sounds like the start of a perfect leadership moment, the kind you read about in those shiny business books.
Exactly. You're ready to be the mentor of the year. But then, fast forward 20 minutes.
Uh-oh.
You sort of wake up from a trance and realize you've been listening to this monologue about Jira tickets, software dependencies, and just this detailed list of everything that might go wrong next week.
The project status meeting.
Yes. You know everything about the project status, but you realize with this sinking feeling that you still have zero clue how the person sitting across from you is actually doing.
That is the classic trap. You went looking for a human connection, and you ended up with the status report. And the worst part is, you probably let it happen.
Oh, for sure.
Because it feels productive in the moment, right?
Exactly. It feels like work is getting done. But when they walk out the door, you just realize you missed the entire point.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we're unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into a guide called The Art of the 1.1. It's a fascinating and honestly kind of a relief-inducing look at why our standard management meetings feel so broken.
Yeah.
And more importantly, how to fix them.
And what's really compelling about the source material is that it suggests this isn't just a scheduling error. It's not a lack of social skills on your part. It's a structural problem.
A structural problem. Huh?
Yeah. We're going to look at a specific framework, one that actually draws some parallels to organizational psychology, to transform these meetings from, dry status updates into actual tools for engagement.
So if you've ever felt like your meetings are just going through the motions, or if you're an employee dreading that 30-minute block on your calendar, this deep dive is for you. Let's start with the problem itself. Why does this happen?
Yeah, why do we drift towards status updates like a moth to a flame?
Right.
Well, it's rarely accidental. The source material is very clear on this. When a one-on-one turns into a project report, something is usually happening beneath the surface. It's often a mechanism of avoidance.
Avoidance of what? Because talking about work, it seems like the opposite of avoidance.
Yes.
It feels like we're tackling the problems head on.
It feels safe. It's avoidance of the uncomfortable. I mean, talking about tasks is objective, right? Talking about feelings, motivation, or friction with a coworker, that's subjective. And it's risky.
Okay, that makes sense.
The guide actually identifies 4 distinct archetypes of people who steer the conversation toward these safe, boring work topics.
Ooh, I love a good archetype breakdown. Who are we dealing with here?
Okay, so first you've got the work-only type.
Work only.
For these individuals, the conversation is the work. They genuinely feel that discussing anything personal or career-related is just, it's unnecessary fluff.
So they're not hiding a problem, they just see it as inefficient.
Exactly. They want to get in, give you the data, and get out. The risk, of course, is you miss the burnout until it's way too late. You only ever treat the symptom, never the disease.
Right. Okay, so who's next?
The second type is a bit more complex, the hider.
The hider. That sounds more defensive.
It is. The hider uses project details as a shield. The source notes that if motivation is low, or if there's a difficult interpersonal problem, staying at the level of tasks and tickets is a safe place.
It's a filibuster.
It's an emotional filibuster, precisely.
Fill the airtime with data so there's no room for feelings?
You got it. And that connects directly to the third type, the trust issue. When trust in a manager is low, employees stay professional, precise, and distant.
Right, because anything you say can and will be used against you. If I admit I'm struggling, maybe I don't get that promotion. So I'll just say the project is on track and smile.
Exactly. But the fourth one, this one really stood out to me. The source calls it the superhero.
The superhero, so this is someone doing great work.
Not necessarily. It's more of a cultural mindset. These are the people who believe talking about feelings or team dynamics is just noise. To them, real work is the grind.
The martyr complex.
Yes. I'm too busy suffering for the cause to talk about my mental health. And the danger there is that superheroes often crash the hardest.
So what's the takeaway then?
The key takeaway from the source is that just knowing these archetypes, it doesn't fix the problem. You can't just look at a hider and say, hey, stop hiding. You need a structure, a framework.
And that brings us to the core of this deep dive. The author of our source suggests structuring every single one-on-one around 4 simple areas.
And this is where it gets really interesting conceptually. The author admits they arrived at this structure just through years of practice, trial and error. But it turns out these 4 areas align perfectly with the work of David McClelland, a famous organizational psychologist.
I always love when practical experience accidentally reinvents academic theory. It sort of validates the science.
It really does. McClelland studied what drives us, and he boiled it down to 3 main drivers: achievement, power, and belonging.
So the framework we're looking at uses those 3.
Plus one big overarching metric to kick things off.
Okay, so let's list them out before we dive in. The 4 quadrants are motivation,
achievement,
power,
and belonging. And the order really matters. You can't just jump straight to the heavy stuff.
Okay, so let's start where the meeting starts. Quadrant 1, motivation. The author calls this the checksum.
This is my favorite part of the whole thing because it cuts through the noise immediately. The advice is to start the meeting not with how are things, but with a simple rating scale, 1 to 5.
I love the simplicity, but I can see some people rolling their eyes at being asked to rate themselves like, I don't know, an Uber driver. How does the scale work?
It's very straightforward, and the definitions are key. A 5 is, I can't wait to come to work. A 1 is, I'm actively looking for a new job.
And 3 is just normalissa.
Yep. The source has a funny bit here about why you need a number. It says it prevents the I'm fine autopilot response. We're all conditioned to say I'm fine.
Even when the building is on fire, yeah.
It forces a moment of reflection. But the source also warns against the engineer answers. The people who try to hack the system.
The ones who say 3.5 or pi.
Exactly. The advice is to force them to integers, make a choice. But the real insight here is why it's called a checksum.
Right. Let's unpack that. In computing, a checksum verifies data integrity.
Exactly. So in this context, the motivation number is the data verification for the rest of the meeting. This is the brilliant part. If an employee rates their motivation as a 2, which is low, the reason for that 2 must appear in the discussion of the other 3 quadrants.
So if I start the meeting saying I'm a 2, I can't just say everything is fine when we talk about achievement or power later.
No, you can't. If the motivation is low, but the rest of the discussion is all sunshine and rainbows, the checksum fails. The data is corrupt. Something is being hidden.
That is an incredibly powerful diagnostic tool. It connects the feeling to the facts.
It does. But there's a huge caveat here in the source. This only works if the meeting is a safe place.
Crucial point.
Yeah. If an employee fears judgment, they'll just say 4 and seethe in silence. The manager has to communicate that the goal isn't to judge the number. You don't get fired for being a 2. You get help.
Okay, so once we have that number, that baseline, we move to quadrant 2, achievement. Now, this sounds like it could easily slip back into status update territory.
It could, but the key is changing the framing. The shift here is from activity to contribution.
What's the difference? I mean, in a busy week, activity feels a lot like contribution.
It feels like it, but it isn't. Activity is, I cleared my inbox. Contribution is, did I actually move the project forward? The source suggests asking, what were your achievements last month?
So it's about value, not just busyness. It forces you to curate your own work history in real time.
And there's a second question in this quadrant that I think is brilliant. Are you happy with your contribution?
Oh, that adds a subjective layer.
Yeah.
Because you could be crushing your tasks but still feel empty about it.
Precisely. It aligns effort with meaning. Someone might be achieving, but they aren't growing. It's the difference between I did a good job and I feel good about the job I did.
Right.
And then the third question in this section, which I think every manager should just tattoo on their arm, is there any roadblock I can help remove?
We hear that a lot in Agile stand-ups. Any blockers? Is this different?
It's deeper. In a stand-up, a blocker is usually tactical, like I'm waiting for an email.
Yeah.
Here, a roadblock is much broader. It's systemic friction. And by asking, the manager is shifting the dynamic. It says, my job is to clear the path for you.
Okay, so we've got motivation, the feeling, and achievement, the output. Now, quadrant 3, power. My mind immediately goes to office politics, but that's not what this is, right?
No, put the dragons away. In this context, power isn't about dominance. It's about room to act. It's about autonomy and agency.
So it's about what's holding someone back from doing their best work.
Yes. And the source points out a really interesting pattern here. When people say they're blocked, they often point to technical issues. The server is slow.
Sure.
But if you dig deeper, those are usually symptoms of system issues.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, so say an engineer complains that the deployment process is too slow. The technical fix is buy faster servers. But the power issue might be that they don't have the authority to approve their own code, so they're waiting 3 days for a manager's signature. That's a lack of power.
So this quadrant is about finding where the employee feels helpless.
Exactly. And there's a question in this section that I absolutely love. The source calls it the secret power question.
I highlighted this too. What is your secret power? It sounds a little cheesy, but why does it work?
It's disarming. It invites the employee to talk about a strength they have that isn't being used in their current role.
It's like asking, what are you great at that I'm stupidly not letting you do?
Essentially. It often reveals a gap between what the person was hired to do and what they are capable of doing. And if you don't know, they'll eventually leave to find a job that uses that power.
This quadrant also covers the future, right? How do you see your future here?
Yes, and that helps the manager see if the employee feels stagnant. If they can't answer that, that is a massive red flag.
Okay, so motivation, achievement, power. That leaves the final quadrant, belonging.
This one corresponds to McClellan's affiliation. And the source notes that this is the hardest one to measure. You can't really make a graph of belonging in Excel.
It says it shows up in small signals.
Right. It's in how people talk about the team. Do they say we or they? And the source suggests a question that sounds trivial, but is actually critical. Are you having fun?
Are you having fun? I can imagine some old school managers bristling at that. We aren't here to have fun.
Which is exactly why they lose their best people. The source argues that fun is a proxy for psychological safety and social connection. When the fun disappears, disengagement is right behind it.
It's a litmus test for the culture.
And then there's the final question of the meeting, the open floor.
Anything else on your mind?
Seems standard, right, a throwaway line. But the source says this is often where the real meeting begins.
Why is that? Why wait until the very end?
Because you've just spent 20 or 30 minutes priming the brain. You've established safety, you've celebrated achievement, you've offered power. The defensive walls are down. That is when the big scary topic, the one they were afraid to bring up, finally slips out.
Actually, there is one thing.
Exactly.
So that's the framework. It's solid. But I want to talk logistics for a second, because the best framework can fail with bad execution. The source has some very specific opinions on frequency.
It does. It identifies the sweet spot for this specific kind of deep dive meeting as once a month.
Once a month. That feels infrequent. I feel like most managers are on a weekly or bi-weekly cadence.
Well, the argument is about the depth and purpose of the meeting. The source isn't saying only speak to your team once a month. You should be talking daily about tasks.
Right.
But if you do this specific framework, this deep psychological check-in every single week, it becomes a burden.
It would feel like an interrogation. What's your secret power this week?
Right. I don't know. I just got here. It dilutes the value. But if you wait too long, like once a quarter, you miss small problems before they become big ones.
So weekly is for tactics, monthly is for strategy and humanity.
That's a great way to put it. And there's a great practical tip on how to track it. The slide stack.
I like this. Explain the slide stack for our listeners.
It's painfully simple, which is why it works. You use a single presentation file PowerPoint, Google Slides, whatever, for each employee. And for every meeting, you just add a new slide on top with the template.
So you have a reverse chronological history.
Right. Over time, you build this clear historical record. You can flip back and see, oh, 6 months ago, your motivation was a 2. We fixed that roadblock and it shot up to a 4.
It creates a narrative of progress.
Yeah.
Instead of just another meeting.
And this is crucial. The employee fills this out before the meeting.
Right. Is that just to save time?
It's partly efficiency, yeah. But more importantly, the act of writing it down forces the reflection. By the time they sit down with you, they have already processed their feelings. The meeting is for discussion, not discovery.
Okay, so let's step back. What does this all mean for our listener? If they're sitting there thinking, my one-on-ones are totally status updates, what's the first step?
I think the biggest takeaway is a shift in mindset. You have to realize that you are not there to monitor work. You have Jira for that. You are there to uncover blockers and build trust.
And don't just try to control a conversation better with sheer willpower.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the mistake we all make.
And then we fail. Because habits are strong. You need a tool. Use the structure. The structure does the heavy lifting for you. The questions themselves steer the ship into the right waters.
It really emphasizes that trust isn't built by grand gestures or, company retreats. It's built by consistently identifying small things and actually fixing them.
That's it. Think about the impact. When an employee says, I'm a 3 because I can't get this software license, and you get them that license by the next day, that builds more trust than 1,000 pizza parties. It shows you're listening.
It's the follow-through. It turns the manager from a boss into a partner.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this framework is really about humanizing the workplace. We're not robots processing tasks. We have drives for achievement, for power, for belonging. When management processes ignore that, people check out.
That's a perfect place to wrap up the analysis. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought from the source material. It's a question for all of us to ask ourselves when we feel stuck.
It is a provocative one. It forces you to look in the mirror.
What question am I not asking that would make it easier for the person to talk about what really matters?
That's the key. The silence between the questions is sometimes where the truth lives.
That's it for this deep dive into the art of the 1.1. Go forth, stop the status updates, and find out what your team's secret powers are. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Agile Engineering Deep Dive podcast. If today's episode gave you new insight into working across teams or highlighted the role of discipline in achieving real agility, feel free to share it with your colleagues or your network. You can find the full written article along with previous episodes in the Agile Software Engineering newsletter on LinkedIn. And if you have thoughts, questions, or examples from your own organization, I'd be happy to hear from you. Your experiences help shape what we explore next. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.